USA during World War I, the true story. My name is Sebastian Tapashio.
My name is Theron Hardy.
Our other group members were Shiv Naidu and Mohammed Merchant.
World War I relates to rights because laws were passed in America that violated citizens' First Amendment rights. These laws originated when Americans started protesting against the involvement of the U.S. in the war. Anti-war Americans who are protesting faced punishments like jail time. The U.S. government also gave their citizens responsibilities by buying war bonds and donating to charity. They passed the Selective Service Act, which made young men from ages 21 to 30 responsible for serving in the military. Additionally, the U.S. had responsibilities to protect other countries and gathering funds. Both Russia and France, which had been attacked and humiliated in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870–71, feared the rising power of Germany, which had already formed alliances with Austria, Hungary, and Italy. So the two nations decided to join forces for mutual protection as well. It was the start of what would become the Allied side in World War I. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, went to Sarajevo to inspect the imperial troops stationed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He and his wife Sophie were shot to death in their car by a 19-year-old Serbian revolutionary, Gavrilo Princip.
Why did the US join World War I? Originally, the United States had no intention of joining World War I. This decision changed when Germany started attacking enemy passenger and merchant boats, including Lusitania, a British cruise liner that brought many people down with it. This led to the president at the time, Woodrow Wilson, into giving Germany a choice. They could either not attack passenger ships and give merchants a chance to escape, or have the US sever diplomatic relationships with them. Germany accepted, and this interaction was called the Sussex Pledge. On January 1917, however, German military leader Kaiser Wilhelm II was convinced to break the pledge. Policymakers reasoned that since America supplied the Allies who were against Germany, they had lost their neutrality. Eventually, this snowballed into more submarine attacks and a message called the Zimmermann Telegram. It threatened an attack on the US, and all of the attacks showed Wilson that Germany did not want to resolve this issue peacefully, leading to the US joining the war.
In World War I, many posters were hung around to get citizens to feel that they had the responsibility to enlist in the army. The posters usually had images that represented the United States of America. They were usually pointing to whoever read the poster, so that that person felt they were required to enlist. Most posters also had patriotic slogans. Using posters was very effective and caused many people to join the war. Soon, posters also justified the United States' participation in the war. Eventually, the posters also encouraged people to buy Liberty bonds and to support World War I funding. In World War I, the government needed money to support the war, and to solve this, the US government introduced Liberty bonds. There were 4 separate installments of Liberty bonds. When Americans bought a Liberty bond, they essentially loaned money to the government. This effort was known as the Liberty Loan Program. This system was created by the Treasury of the United States and the Federal Reserve System. The government sponsored Liberty bonds as a way to keep liberty alive and to support the war effort.
Throughout World War I, having every country fighting in this war, the US had many responsibilities. The US, knowing it would be good for them, maintained a state of isolation. The president at the time, Thomas Woodrow Wilson, vowed to keep the US safe and out of the war for the time being. Eventually, the attack on American lives pushed them to the edge and forced them into the war. After this, President Wilson announced attacks on passenger ships and repeatedly issued warnings that the US would not tolerate unrestricted submarine warfare. Alongside this, Germany tried to ally with Mexico to support the Central Powers to go against the US, promising them support. In response to this, the US officially entered the war because he stated that the world must be safe for democracy. In World War I, objection to the war was near impossible, and US rights for citizens were already being taken away due to corrupt mandates taking advantage of their liberty and rights. Little to no Americans favored their country's involvement. There was opposition to both the war and the government's policy of conscription. Many believed that the war financially benefited arms and munitions manufacturers at the disproportionate cost of ethnic and racial minorities and those of low social economic status. Congress passed up the Espionage Act of 1917 to silence those who continued speaking out and promoting disloyal behavior. It made it illegal for any person to deliberately cause or attempt or to cause disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty in the military or naval forces of the United States, or to intentionally obstruct the recruiting or enlistment service of the United States. Thousands of people were arrested and charged for alleged disloyal or seditious speech. This act blatantly disregarded Americans' First Amendment rights.
When the US ended up joining the war, it was very ill-equipped. Artists and illustrators designed posters that flooded the country and encouraged people to join the war and help with the fight. After this, Congress passed the Selective Service Law to build a good fighting force. On May 18, 1917, the required men who could physically fight in the war and were between the ages of 21 to 30 were to register for the army. Men who could not fight in the war for any reason were strongly encouraged to buy Liberty bonds. When the war ended, there were around 2.8 million people that were forcefully drafted into the war. More than 320,000 of these people sadly did not survive.
Responsibilities with unlisted. There were lots of responsibilities inside and outside of World War I in the United States. There were lots of roles to fill, so everyone in the United States had a responsibility. There were all different options, but the higher class citizen had less to do. The more wealth you had, the more you could donate to the war. Once you donated enough, you could get out of everything about the war. This system made lower class individuals have to do lots of tedious tasks that many people now realize. If a citizen could not pay, they would have to do factory work and medical jobs. Children were also forced to sell war bonds and make symbols of victory. When the war took place, lots of people got randomly drafted and had no preparations.
The American Expeditionary Forces arrived in Europe in 1917 and helped turn the tide in favor of Britain and France, leading to an Allied victory over Germany and Austria in November 1918. By the time of the armistice, or truce, more than 4 million Americans had served in the armed forces and 116,708 people had lost their lives. The war shaped the writings of Ernest Hemingway and John Dos Passos. It helped forge the military careers of Dwight D. Eisenhower, George S. Patton, and George C. Marshall. On the home front, millions of women went to work, replacing the men who had shipped off to war, while others knitted socks and made bandages. For African American soldiers, the war opened up a world not bound by America's formal and racist codes.
This concludes the rights and responsibilities of World War I.